It's the Smart Driving Cars podcast. We hope you are staying well and safe and are glad you're with us. This edition is sponsored by the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. For more information, head to motoetf.com. I'm Fred Fishkin, along with the Faculty Chair of Autonomous Vehicle Engineering at Princeton University, Alain Kornhauser. Hi again, Alain.
Good morning, Fred. Glad we can be together again. Reflect also what you said. Hope everybody is safe and well, and we're getting through all of this.
We are. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Autonomous shuttle vehicles from Beep are being used to transport medical supplies and COVID-19 tests at the Mayo Clinic in Florida. This is in conjunction with the Jacksonville Transportation Authority and Navia. And we're fortunate to have with us the CEO of Beep, Joe Moye. Thanks for joining in this morning, Joe.
Fred, it's my pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Joe, it's real great having you. Thank you for joining in. We know that you're busily trying to help out down there, and thank you for taking a few minutes with us here today.
And he's in his vehicle.
More than my pleasure.
Well, you're down in Florida, Joe. Tell us a little bit more about the Beep background, first of all.
Yeah, so Beep as a business, we're an autonomous mobility as a service provider based in Orlando. And in short, what we do is provide transportation for those first mile, last mile use cases, leveraging multi-passenger autonomous electric vehicles, serving public and private communities in Florida and elsewhere. So very, very exciting time for the business.
Well, describe for us what's going on now with the medical supplies and COVID-19 tests.
Yeah, so we have been partnering with the JTA for some time now in a test environment to prove out some of the capabilities of these autonomous vehicles as it relates to some use cases that they're exploring for downtown Jacksonville. And in the course of that work, we were introduced to Mayo Clinic recently, and some of the things that they were trying to tackle on their campus in support of, obviously, the COVID-19 work. And specifically, they've got drive-up test areas where patients can drive onto the campus into a very specific area, into a tent without getting out of their car, be tested for COVID-19. And the use case was, how could we move those samples safely and securely from that testing area over to the clinic where they're processed? So we got together as a team in about a week's time. We're able to launch our vehicles. Instead of transporting passengers at this point, we're transporting these tests. And so it was an opportunity to repurpose the technology and support Mayo Clinic, and obviously the great work that's being done out there to help advance, getting this COVID-19 situation behind us. So pretty exciting. We've been in motion now for 2 full weeks, and it's working extremely well.
Well, congratulations on doing that, and thank you for doing that. But I think what it also shows is the ability to basically both be resilient and pivot in terms of what you do with this mobility. Maybe for a while you're moving people, another while you're doing what you're doing. So, in a sense, this is a great test of the technology.
Yeah, I really think so, and I have to say, as you're well aware, these technologies are regulated by the government for these test cases, and the public and private sector have kind of come together in a real quick period of time to loosen some of the restrictions and do what was right in proving out this use case, and in this case, freeing up healthcare workers to focus on much more important work than transporting these tests and specimens. So it was really exciting to see the public-private partnership that played out among the Jacksonville Transportation Authority, obviously our company, the Mayo Clinic, and even the U.S. Department of Transportation.
Joe, there are safety drivers on board these vehicles?
There are not. We typically operate We typically operate currently in all of our passenger use cases with safety attendants on board. That is part of, the model and the restriction today. Although they operate, in a significant level of autonomy, about 95%, we do have those attendants on board until the technology matures a little further. But we were able to deploy these vehicles, given the way we set up the pathway. It's about a half a mile between the testing area and the clinic. We deployed these in complete autonomous mode, so there is no attendant on board. It is just the tests and the supplies.
It's very important that that be emphasized, that in fact that this is the way that these are operating. In a sense, we have a little bit farther to go to be able to do those kinds of things without an attendant when we're moving people. But when we're moving things and in the appropriate place, here they are, they're available. And this is really the opportunity to show both the flexibility and the effectiveness, and of course also having to do with maybe the affordability of doing all of this stuff. People can have plenty of other things to do in this situation. They don't need to be doing the driving between these two places. So this really needs to be emphasized, and that's one of the reasons we're happy to have you here with us here this morning.
No, we're glad to tell the story. Real proud of the entire team that tackled this. And, as you might imagine, our passenger services right now are paused, given the COVID-19 situation we're all facing. And so it was a great kind of rallying cry to get the teams together across JTA and ourselves and Mayo Clinic to be able to put this deployment in place. And as I said, I literally got a call on a Saturday night about 9 o'clock introducing this opportunity, and on Monday morning we were already mobilizing the team, and in less than a week we're launched and delivering our first set of samples. So you folks know a lot about these technologies and what it takes in these geo-fenced deployments. It's usually about a month to 6 weeks to deploy one of these vehicles properly, and we were able to do it in a week's time, which I think is a testament to everybody coming together and really focusing on the importance of getting this done.
Yes, again, congratulations on that, because that's, again, really showing the opportunity with this technology. Again, it's flexibility to be able to go out there and do the next thing. And also, I think it provides all of us, you and so on, an opportunity to continue to improve it so that we get to a point where we can move people the same way. That is it's a much bigger challenge, but my goodness, here it is. A lot of us, not only is the Mayo Clinic need to have some deliveries made, maybe we all need to have some deliveries made, and certainly to do that more affordably and more efficiently and so on with this technology is a real opportunity. So, as I like to say, some people have suggested that for autonomy, this is the worst of times. I like to think it may be the best of times. It really shows the opportunity that this technology has, and I think you're demonstrating that.
Joe, let me ask you this. It may or may not be applicable or something that you're even responsible for, but we've talked about before as driverless technology can be used in situations like this. What do you do about disinfecting or making a vehicle safe after it's been used in this kind of situation?
Yeah, and so in the case of our passenger transports, as COVID-19 was really starting to surface and we were not quite in that lockdown mode, we armed all of our attendants with disinfectant wipes and solution and the sanitary gel and things of that nature, which were offered to passengers. And the vehicles, in our case, they're 10-person, seated vehicles, so it's not a large vehicle, and we were able to wipe those down literally, after every shift. And so we did the things to kind of stay sterile, if you would, when we were transporting passengers. And we do a similar thing here, although these tests are secured, in a basically a cooler type device when they're transported. At the end of the day, we go through a similar act of just wiping them down properly and preparing them for the next day in the spirit of trying to keep everything disinfected.
And do you have some thoughts about as we move forward, and hopefully we don't run into these kinds of situations again or often, but the concerns that people are going to have about ride sharing going forward after this kind of situation, and how you're going to deal with it in terms of keeping the vehicles safe?
Yeah, it's a fair question. I don't think any of us quite know how things are going to bounce back in any sector. I mean, we're highly confident, given the nature of the work that we do in these public and private communities, and frankly, the adoption that we've had in people trying to find a form of transportation, as an alternative to their personal vehicles, and staying at home or I should say, leaving their cars at home to go out to dinner and other, accessing other services across these communities. My sense is people, as always in this country, are very resilient, and I think they're going to, get right back up on the horse, so to say. And, we're excited to be in the position we are of having a number of new deployments that are targeted to launch later this summer. And it's our belief that although we're going to obviously be living in a different world and probably taking measures to ensure things are cleaner and more sanitized, which is a good practice anyways, my sense is that, this technology is not going away. You know that, and I know that. But, human behavior is an interesting thing, but I'm one that believes, not only this business, but also, other businesses across our country are going to come back strong.
Yeah, plus, Fred, there's an enormous demand of people that don't have access to cars, that have had this demand for this kind of mobility even before this crisis. They still need help. They still need some things with respect to improving their quality of life, being able to get to the blue-collar jobs and so on, that the public transportation systems just haven't been able to provide up to now. And so those opportunities still exist, and as we get out of this, it'll still be the best of times.
Sure.
It's a really, really great point.
Joe, you mentioned some new things that you have coming along, hopefully later this year during the summer. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, so we've been awarded a couple of new contracts down in the Central Florida area. We launched it at our cornerstone customer in Lake Nona, Florida, which is a large development down there where they've got just 18 square miles of business, residential, medical centers, sports centers, and we're kind of creating the mobility network to attach all those services and make them accessible to visitors and businesses and residents. And we're launching several similar programs over in the Tampa area and the Pinellas County area later this summer. We've recently launched a project in Peoria, Arizona, similar kind of downtown deployment for that first mile, last mile project, and several other private developers that are using these autonomous mobility services as a means of differentiating their development in their community and providing access to services without the need for personal transportation. So very similar models, and I think real exciting use cases for how we prove out this technology. And now having done it in full autonomous mode and all the learnings that we've had over the last year, I'm one that thinks we're going to, in these slower speed use cases, be able to really push the envelope in a very safe fashion to get more of these vehicles in autonomous mode.
I should point out, when I first heard of your success in Peoria, I said to myself, Peoria has classically been used as the example of the typical community in America. But this was Peoria, Arizona, not Peoria, Illinois. But anyway, close enough, and so on. So that one, I think. Also, I'd like to point out we probably love to invite you up here to Central Jersey. I've been working closely with the mayor of Trenton and the city council and so on to create a welcoming environment here to provide mobility in the city of Trenton. And there the focus is really people that don't have access to cars. It's not the sort of the focus of, hey, you know, I've got a car and I'm going to leave it at home. It's, my goodness, I've got to get someplace and I don't have a car. And so looking at that, and to me, that's another real rich opportunity to go out and try some of these things where there the delivery of the improvement in the quality of life to those individuals is life changing because they can now maybe have access to jobs that can help feed their families and so on. And it's basically, and fundamental services such as healthcare and that they really don't have. So in a sense, as we get everybody, we're trying to create a situation here in which there's a welcoming environment that everybody here wants this to come in and wants to work with the private sector to make it happen. You pointed out the importance of cooperation between the public and the private instead of a competitive sort of thing or whatever. This is absolutely necessary so that it is safe not only in terms of vehicles not colliding, but where people get on and off, or safe, welcoming places where people want to use the service, where there's not anxiety associated with it, that in fact it can really contribute to the improvement of their quality of life. So, you know, at some point we're going to reach out to you when we're ready, but we want to be ready here so that you don't have to waste your time getting us ready.
No, I would welcome that opportunity. And I think just to echo your comments, we're fortunate in a couple of the communities we serve. There's a retirement home in one of those areas where, you know, transportation is not readily available, and providing those residents access to some of the services where they don't have an alternative means of transportation, and, you know, connecting residents and visitors that are into the VA clinic down there in Orlando that we serve as well. So you're exactly right. It's not just about, you know, providing an alternative means of transportation. In some ways, it's providing the only means of transportation.
The primary means, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And yeah, and along those lines, it's really important to look at that community and how to get that community involved. And guess what? You don't need high speed. Okay, you know, maybe you need 35 miles an hour, and maybe, you know, NHTSA in Washington will say, hey, my goodness, you know, we have seated passengers here. We figured out how to restrain them. We figured out how to disinfect the whole darn thing. But let us go in there because in a sense, you're not going that far. You're not commuting down I-whatever or Florida, you know, Turnpike, so on and so forth. Right. And so it's a perfect opportunity for what you've been working on for so long. So anyway, we're trying to create the welcoming environment up here to do that. But
good.
And Jacksonville has really been out front in terms of adopting this and acceptance, right?
They have. The JTA, Jacksonville Transportation Authority, has led a program as an extension of a US DOT build grant that they received a couple of years ago to prove out these technologies. They're doing extensive testing and working very closely with us, not only in what they're doing in their test environments, but also in data sharing and what we're doing out there in these live use cases. And they've got a major program, the Ultimate Urban Circulator, U2C down there, that I would say is probably, you know, one of the leading programs in our country, if not the world, in, readying the city for these autonomous platforms. Real proud to work with them.
Yeah, they've been in it for a while. I mean, maybe 40 years, right? When did they build their first people mover down there? So
You're right.
Jacksonville's been through this and so on. So, and what it seems like what is coming out of Washington is maybe a lot of money to go support the introduction of the services. The key issue is getting started. Going through all the challenges, headaches, so on, costs, without revenue, challenges of getting started. And if these things are really what some of us believe they are, then they'll be able to take care of themselves. So it looks like more Washington money is coming to that. It looks like some infrastructure money. One of the things I know that we tout about this is that it doesn't need special infrastructure, so therefore it's even more attractive. But it does need some infrastructure. The infrastructure where
Absolutely.
people are being picked up and dropped off, sort of what I call the curbside furniture of all of this. How to make those places safe and inviting. Without who knows what, and so that people will want to use the system and interface with it. So it's not just riding in the system, it's interfacing with the system too. So there are opportunities there that will help propel this, and I'm sure you'll be going after those as they emerge.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think to your point, not only is there funding and interest behind this, across the U.S. Department of Transportation. We've also worked very closely with NHTSA in how these vehicles are regulated. We're engaged in a data sharing consortium with them just to continue to push as much as we learn into the hands of those that regulate the vehicles so that we can get smarter together and more quickly get these vehicles into real practical use out there, many of the examples that you've hit on. So exciting times in front of us.
Yeah, certainly compliment you on that one, because that's sort of something that I've harped on in the past. The data sharing, especially associated with safety and security, is absolutely paramount. And for us to individually compete on safety is just silly, because if one of us isn't safe, none of us are. I mean, nobody's going to use this stuff. I mean, look at what we had to go through because Uber screwed up. Okay, in one time in Arizona. So, and to share, especially the safety data and the security data and the cyber security data and those things, so that we all, as you said, get smarter together, because it'll raise everybody, and there's such a demand opportunity for all of this. There's plenty out there for everybody. It's not that somebody has to scurry and grab it all.
No, you're exactly right. And I think one of the things I'm most proud of as it relates to our team is that whole safety first mantra, because we saw exactly what you just described as we launched this, which was, any mishap is going to impact us all. And so what can we do to learn and get better every day? And so, we've instituted things in all of our communities that we serve, like first responder training. People don't necessarily think of that coming out of the blocks, but, if there is an incident, even if it doesn't involve the vehicle, but the vehicle's caught behind a traffic accident or something like that, or, there's another situation where it needs to maneuver around a certain opportunity or obstacle, having the first responders familiar with the technology and not, scratching their head about it when a situation occurs. It's just a continuous education process on safety and getting, not only at the federal level, but at the local level, everybody aligned behind best practices.
And it's not only the first responders, it's also the whole police force. If you look at a police force in
Absolutely.
most cities, what do they do? A lot of it has to do with traffic. A lot of it has to do with public safety, and really all public safety. And this is a system, as we've talked to here, it's not only the safety associated in transporting, getting from A to B, it's the safety associated with getting in and getting out. It's the whole environmental say, as well as all the whole community that these things go through and so on. So everybody has to be on board, and having the police force and not only the emergency first responders, but the whole police force on board, supportive. They can bring you down trivially, you know. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, if they're not on, if they don't want it, you aren't going to be there. Okay. So in a sense, to make sure that they're inviting and on board right from the beginning is extremely important. I know everybody realizes this, but it's so easy to, you know, forget about it, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. No, you raise a really important point. In the police, fire, rescue, I put all those in the bucket of the first responders, and we've got programs. To your point, with the police force in particular and the local sheriff's offices, to make sure that, you know, they're familiar with, supportive of what we're doing, and understand the measures we're putting in place to ensure safety. So really excellent point.
And really getting their cooperation to help you do it, because in the end, you need their cooperation. You need their help. You know, and guess what? They tend to be very interested in helping.
Yep, I completely agree.
Well, Joe, it really sounds like you're doing things right there, and congratulations on what you're doing in this situation. Significant step forward, fully driverless, the transportation that you're providing for these supplies and the tests. The website for more info is go-beep.com. Really appreciate you being here, Joe, and look forward to speaking to you again.
Gentlemen, a true pleasure. Appreciate the good work you're doing, and look forward to talking again soon.
Thank you, and get to work, huh? They need you. They need you. They need you. Okay. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks, gentlemen.
We'll continue in just a moment, but this is a good time to remind you about our sponsor, the Smart ETF's Smart Transportation and Technology ETF, symbol MOTO. You can get more information at motoetf.com. You know, ETFs can be a good way to spread risk while you're investing in a category of stocks. To learn more, take a look at the white paper titled The Smart Transportation Revolution at motoetf.com. It's under the Insights and News tab. That's where you'll find the information you need to learn more. Well, the self-driving startup Nuro has gotten permission from the California DMV to begin testing driverless delivery robots on public roads in the state. The authorization is for 2 light-duty delivery vehicles that will operate in communities in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, this is again some good news here that California is moving along. They've had this application opportunity for companies to provide driverless services without attendants, and this is the second one, Waymo being the first one to have the authority to do that, and to do it in communities. It really extends what we've been talking about in just before this with respect to what's happening down there in Jacksonville, but this is in communities. And so this is the next big step for all this, to have these vehicles actually providing valuable contribution to society and providing now the movement of goods. You know, we have this issue with respect to physical distancing with respect to the movement of people. We're going to have to be able to find an elegant way to around that one. because ride sharing is so darn important to lead to affordability of these systems. But when it comes to moving goods, packages, then we don't have this physical distancing issue. And so this is now a real opportunity. And given that we've been told to stay home, and who knows how much we're going to be told to stay home in the future, I'm sure we're going to be allowed to go to the store, but many people are going to become used to having more things delivered to them. Amazon Prime, I mean, is this the best news you've ever heard of? My goodness, I don't know. Here we go, but this is very good news.
Right. They are taking a cautious approach with it too. The vehicles can only go, I think, 25 miles an hour, up to 25, and they're only operating in good weather. So they're not taking a lot of chances with this, it seems.
Right, of course. And, I thought California only had good weather. Why do they have to, put that restriction? I mean, really? Yeah. And they didn't say anything about at night, which, I'm assuming these things can operate at night as long as it's good weather. And the night thing is really important. Right now, the roads aren't being used, so it's no problem. But if we get back out there ourselves on the roads, then the real opportunity for moving goods is between under normal times, if we ever, assuming we get back to normal times, is between midnight and 5 a.m. or 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. There's certainly I don't think very many children, if any, out there playing ball in the streets, and the streets are there available. The only thing maybe the refuse collectors and street cleaners, maybe you have to watch out for them, but otherwise this is an enormous opportunity. And so yes, we get to try it out in good weather and lighted conditions and get the thing started. The 25-mile-an-hour thing, really wish they didn't let that go up to maybe 40 or 35 or something like that. 25 is certainly plenty. The problem is that many of our local streets have 35-mile-an-hour speed limits or 25-mile-an-hour speed limits, in which too many people think they get a free extra 9 and taking you to 34. And so these things, these vehicles will have to be thought of as natural vehicles in our communities, not as lumbering whatevers and so on. They need to be welcomed. They need to be respected. They need to be more than tolerated, but in fact treated as if they're actually real enhancements to everybody's quality of life, and therefore welcomed. And to make them welcomed, they can't be too different, and they can't be restraining others. And so, yes, it's nice to do it at 25 and find places to just do it at 25. But it seems that we have established our communities to go a little bit faster than that. Not that we shouldn't all fall back to 25. 25 is fine. I mean, how far are you going? You're not going that far. This is not, to go out there and use the 405 or the or 101 for the long distance commute. I mean, those rich people already have too many ways to travel. They probably take their helicopter, or they're going to want to take a drone. Let them drone it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, this is mobility.
The concern is you don't want to be antagonizing people, tying up traffic. You want them to fit in and kind of go with the flow.
Absolutely, they've got to, because if they don't, then guess what? People are, I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what road rage is going to come out of it. And in fact, these things are for communities, maybe arterials, maybe not. This is coming out of this crisis. The smart city may evolve into the smart community. And in fact, everybody packed into, some little tight corner someplace and so on and so forth. And all that congestion may turn out to be spread out. And in fact, you don't have if there are enough services around, you don't have to go that far. So I don't know.
Well, we've got some news from Tesla to talk about once again.
Yeah.
The company's sales in China hit a record high during the pandemic, totaling 10,160 vehicles in March. This is China. And that happened while passenger car sales overall in China had slumped 40%.
Yeah, they got, I guess what, 25% of the market or something like that. Yeah, I mean, what is this? Are the Chinese thinking Tesla is like the iPhone? They got to have one. Great, wonderful. Congratulations. I mean, it'd be nice if GM and Ford and Chrysler were also able to sell cars over there. But if it takes Elon, it takes Elon.
Well, Tesla released a video, meanwhile, showing the inside of its Gigafactory in Shanghai. Really quite a video showing the enormity of the place. Tremendous. And all of those robots, the arms, some humans here and there too, I suppose.
Yeah, well, of course there are humans in there, but the number of robots and then the whole process, it I don't know, in the 50s, how long did it take to design a car and then reorient the manufacturing process to build that car? I think the car manufacturers used to shut down for a couple of weeks or something during the summer just to retool for the next year. I mean, if you have robots doing this stuff, you should be able to retool in the next, 5 minutes. Well, maybe not that fast, but reprogram those suckers to do, all sorts of other things, or modify, or put fins on there, or chrome, or I don't know, go to the next year's model, or almost turn on a dime, which is one of the opportunities of the automation. But to look at it and to look at the productivity, the number of cars produced per person hour in that facility as compared to some of these other facilities, I don't know what that looks like, but it must be a very small number compared to a classic car manufacturing place, and to do that in China, where apparently labor is I don't want to say free, but
Less expensive,
more affordable or something like that. Geez, can you imagine what the Fremont plant's going to end up looking like if the Shanghai plant looks like that? I mean, Fremont, they'll have nobody in it. I don't know. But it is worth watching. Okay, it is a video produced.
They built it so fast too, Alan. They built that, I think, in a year or less.
I mean, doesn't it take time to order robots and put them in there? Who had the supply? Were they all sitting in some warehouse someplace? I mean, think of the logistics system that you have to put together to have all those things come in, as well as all the parts. I mean, talk about flexible manufacturing and flexibility and opportunity. I mean, I think it's very impressive. Yeah.
Sure. But here in the U.S., though, we should point out with the coronavirus, Tesla has announced that salaried workers would take pay cuts of 10% or more through the end of June. Most hourly workers are being furloughed, though, and vice presidents and directors are taking even bigger pay cuts. And you had something to say about that in the newsletter.
Yeah, I think it's also should be pointed out that the furloughed workers with the unemployment compensation that exists are really almost being paid as much to not work as they did to work, and which I think is good of the unemployment support that exists, at least for some, and those are, I guess, folks that really can't work remotely, and if they're not producing, then okay, that I guess that's okay to put that on the public spectrum to support them. I thought what was good about what they announced was that vice presidents were being told, I don't know, 30%, managers 20% reductions, and others, 10% reductions. I think it certainly seems like very good public relations on their part to put out there situations that at least percentage-wise, and of course in net dollars, that the top is taking a bigger hit than the bottom. It's got to be reasonable public relations anyway. We know that when things are good, the top gets the most. It's sort of nice to see that at least they're doing it that way. But again, this is a comment from afar, in the bubble of Princeton. I mean, so I don't know how folks want to take my comment on that.
Talking about the virus, our friend Mitch Erickson has a piece in Medium that you're bringing out in the newsletter as well, right?
Yeah, our friend Mitch Erickson wrote a relatively long discussion about what he sees might be some future impacts of the virus. I think in reading it, it seems like he throws everything in there, including the kitchen sink. But yes, there are going to be a lot of impacts. I'm trying to think of these things as to sort of, I'm a Taylor series guy, Taylor series expansions, there's a big term and then smaller term and then smaller terms. And I always want to figure on, focus on the big stuff. And yes, the details are important, but it'd be nice to have a hierarchical element of this thing. And it's sort of a little bit tough to see in my perspective on this, which isn't a very big, very insightly or very knowledgeable perspective, simply because as I explained, my wife and I, we don't watch the news, certainly not CNN nor Fox News. I mean, it's just too much
noise. That's
noise.
why you've got a smile on your face.
Well, I just can't take it. I mean, you bounce from one wall to the other. I mean, it just doesn't. And sitting here, we're extremely fortunate. We're extremely fortunate to be where we are in this Princeton bubble, whatever, that have really no idea as to really what people are going through, and so what the what the potential implications. To me, the biggest disappointment of what's going on now is the data problem, is the data issue. One would have thought that by now we should have systems for which data associated with things like this is available and has little noise and certainly little bias. And it seems to me that the data has nothing but noise and nothing but bias in who knows what ways, because people are pushing one thing or another or something. It's just really disappointing. And you try to
go. It's a whole nother subject, but you don't have data without testing widespread, the whole population.
Right, and it gets down to testing, and then testing, what are the false positive, false negative acid distributions of these things. Maybe that's a detail. I don't think it's a detail. Maybe some people say, well, geez, who understands that stuff? Who cares? I mean, some people do. Put it out there, make it available, trying to find this, and trying to go to CDC and pull data on this. And for example, just death certificates, they're supposed to be filled out, typed in, coded. Why isn't yesterday's death certificates take out all the, privacy data associated with that? Why aren't they available just there? I mean, aren't they being collected? That they have to be somehow sanitized? I mean, what the heck's going on here? I mean, you would think that those, but that's just a pet peeve of mine of this whole thing. What to me seems,
Alan, a few days ago they were calling for more doctors to come to New York. Now they're calling for more funeral directors. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, and you don't know, and again, this that makes good headlines. and so on. But you know, what's underlying all of this, and I don't know. I mean, it's really um, what at least in the very gilded location where I live and what I've experienced, what seems to be working is the logistics system looks like it's putting at least some things on store shelves in grocery stores and pharmacies. And so that's at least something, because if those things weren't working, then we would be in a heap of trouble, and they have to continue to work. Sure, we don't have toilet paper, big deal, okay, but it seems like there is milk, eggs, and butter, okay. So fundamentally, you know, those are the good things. And then if we look at sort of the things, the impacts of things, certainly in the things we're talking about, you know, ride sharing needs, we need to make that happen somehow, and we need to deal with stopping becoming close socially while maintaining some sort of physical distance, I guess. But the important thing is to deal with the socially thing aspect of this, so that you know, we can live relatively half decent lives. And then, you know, going into it, I think we're about to offer our rising seniors, you know, senior thesis topics for next fall. You know, the data issue is certainly one of which I have a lot of students wanting to deal with this, and you know, the fact that that Zoom has worked so well, or all of this has worked so well, at least from where I sit. But you know, where a lot of other people sit, probably not working all that well. We need to understand that to get that to work better. And then with respect to implications, I think we need to look at really what changed post 9/11 and what's still existing, and look at the big things with that, and seeing and mirroring that to this, and what we can learn from that coming out of that. And we probably should also look back very carefully at 1919 and 1920. You know, there were the roaring 20s, which came after the 1918, you know, Spanish flu pandemic, which seems like, at least as far as we are in this one, it seems like that one was worse than this one. I'm not, others can weigh in on whether or not that's a true statement or not. But there's probably a lot that we can learn, and a lot that we can help us anticipate what our challenges might be, by really seeing if there's any data, any real information that has survived 100 years for us to look at, to learn from that particular pandemic. And I'm sure there are people that are working on that, and sure, I probably missed you know, their publications, because, you know, what the hell, I mean, I'm just sitting here at home enjoying myself.
Well, there are some other headlines that talk about relative to this. Zoox has had to lay off almost all of its contract workers, including the backup safety drivers that it was using. No surprise there. I mean, they're just one of every company now.
Well, no surprise. I mean, this is a great opportunity for them. Okay, an opportunity for, hey, the coders, the ones that are writing the code, they get a chance to go to the next version, and make that even better without having to deal with the day-to-day of putting it in vehicles and then going out there and doing testing. They all have simulation models. They can run through all that. In some sense, you know, probably they might have even been planning a pause in the physically putting out of vehicles out there. And you know, that's that piece of it is sort of it's almost, I would think it's almost a welcome to them. It might have been part of their plans. I think I'm probably overstating it at that point, but.
Well, Urban Mobility Daily, in the meantime, has published the COVID-19 Shared Mobility Action Plan. You talk about that a bit in your newsletter.
Yeah, and that's it's nice for them to put that out there. And again, that's an opportunity to go out there and really there, there are going to be changes. Okay, I look at I sort of throw out there to students the sort of the fundamental one. If you're a company in Manhattan that's been renting, I don't know, 200 square foot per person on some office building, for 3,000 people or something like that, 60,000 square feet, paying whatever, and having each one of those people spend, I don't know, 3 hours on New Jersey Transit, Metro North, Long Island Railroad, whatever, commuting to there. Are you going to do that next year? I don't know. You have to look at your balance sheet and say, look at the productivity you got out of the person when they were working remotely or at home or in some, out there in the suburbs and interfacing with this and what they produce versus what it costs to produce that compared to what they produce and what it costs to produce that under the old model. And I don't know what those algorithms are going to show, but I think for some it's going to say, my goodness, we're just going to let our lease expire.
Office space is expensive. That's for sure.
Office space has been expensive, and it may not be in the future because it's just not the cost of the office space. That's one thing. It's the 3 hours,
right,
in whatever. We may not need a new tunnel to New York because maybe not as many people from Jersey are going to go. I don't know. Oh my goodness, I'm going to get the hate mail now.
Russ Mitchell at the LA Times, our friend, has a report out with the headline, "Car dealers are desperate." Does that make it a good time to buy a vehicle online?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I saw that, I went looking at a Subaru because I was going to buy a Subaru and never pulled the trigger. And so now, hey, can I get what I was going to buy 2 months ago? How much money did it might be the only money that I made. I certainly lost a lot in the past 2 months. Yeah, I mean, can you imagine? I mean, the cars would they just haven't been used, so therefore they're not going to. They still depreciate because of time, but the depreciation because of use and maintenance. I mean, poor body shops and repair shops, let alone if you're pumping oil. I mean, what are they doing with all the oil that's being pumped? Do they have enough storage for that? What happened to our oil reserve? Is it that sucker must be full or something?
Well, you're enjoying the price of gas, but as a lot of people point out, there's no place to go. So
there's no place to go, and so nobody's buying it, and so people are making they're eating snacks at home or something like that. I don't know what they're doing. Okay, or they're buying puzzles. It turns out. Guess what? I just finished another one last night.
From the half-baked section of the newsletter comes a report that VW has released video of the heads-up display in the ID3 electric vehicle, and you're shaking your head. I can see that.
I'm not a fan. The reason the instrument cluster is down here is because you don't want it in your face. You really don't. Okay, when you're driving, you should be out looking at the nice environment that exists out there, and certainly looking at what exists in front of you. To have your speed and your where to turn and all that stuff, in your vision. Let me glance down when I want to have it. Okay, I've never been a fan. Okay, and that there are a lot of things that I wasn't a fan of that all of a sudden I'm a fan of. I was never a fan of FaceTime on phones and thinking that doing this kind of thing was totally silly, but I always preferred the physical and social interaction, but we still get the social, not the physical. So I
At least for
changed.
now.
But anyway, I threw it in a half baked. I don't know. It just whatever.
Well, our listeners and viewers should already know that the fourth annual Princeton Smart Driving Car Summit had been planned for May, isn't going to be taking place as planned. Looks like October, Alan, and you've been working on
Looks like October.
Maybe some stuff in between.
We're going to do stuff in between. We've begun doing this with respect to Zoom and putting some videos out there. We're also thinking of doing some other things in terms of more involvement and a little bit more of a debate type structure. If anybody has any suggestions, love to hear. We might end up doing, some sort of remote Zoom type thing with respect to the summit in May. We don't know. We're just still thinking about it, seeing what is really useful, and seeing what people can not only, think about these things, also do it in an environment in which is relaxing and enjoying, and help contribute and help us get out of all what we're in and move on.
Absolutely. That wraps up this edition. Thanks to our sponsor, the Smart ETF, Smart Transportation and Technology ETF. The ticker symbol for the ETF is MOTO. And more information is available at motoetf.com. We want to thank Joe Moye from Beep for taking the time to join us today. Really some great information.
Absolutely. It was great having him, and it's really great to see, the driverless piece really continue to move forward.
Absolutely. And you can find us at smartdrivingcar.com, also on Anchor FM, Spotify, TuneIn, Apple, Google, Spreaker, SoundCloud, wherever you tune for your podcasts. You can ask your smart speaker to play us. You can find my tech reports at textination.com. I'm Fred Fishkin along with Alain Kornhauser. Stay safe and healthy, and thanks for listening.
And have a great Easter, and we had a great Passover. Made great matzo balls.